How you doing, everybody? This week, I'd like to welcome to Innerview the man who laid down the rhythm tracks for the longest charting LP in Billboard magazine history, Dark Side of the Moon. But the music of this man goes deeper than his long and successful association with Pink Floyd. 1981 found him collaborating with Carla Bley, and this year, he completed his second album, this time working with guitarist Rick Finn. For the next hour, we'll review some choice cuts from this latest LP entitled Profile. Plus, we'll take an introspective look at Pink Floyd, this time from behind the drum kit. I'm Jim Ladd. Welcome to an inner view of Nick Mason.
Now, Lie for a Lie, which is a single, and I played on the air the other night. How was it working with your old friend again?
Oh, absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
It just was so nice to... no, I'll start that again, because it may sound a little strange, but it was actually rather nerve-wracking asking Dave to sing on it. I mean, it took some time to decide that, yes, that was definitely that was thought to be best, would be to get Dave to sing on it. And there was some trepidation in approaching him, because I suppose really that fear of rejection. He might say, don't want to, or don't like the song, or whatever. And he immediately, of course, said, yes, of course, he'd love to. I mean, he's very easygoing anyway, and I think he'd have done it even if he hated it. But he came in with a very positive attitude. It wasn't sort of, I know all about singing and I was singing Pink Floyd and you don't. It was very much, it's your record, tell me what you want me to do and I'll do it. And then if you want suggestions, I'll give them. So he was very easy to work with, very happy to have more goes at it, and would say, well, look, let me have one more go, and if it's not so good, we'll move on somewhere else. And very critical of his own work, because that can be a big problem when you're working with other people, knowing quite how much criticism they can take.
Sure.
But he'd be jumping on himself before anyone else would have a chance.
And he did the guitar work on the song too, I would think.
No, he didn't.
He did not?
No, he didn't. I mean, in the video, we've got Dave playing some guitar, and because there's certainly more than one guitar on it. But no, and it might have been nice to have Dave do a little guitar work on something, but in a way, Rick is a very capable guitarist in his own right. Now, I think it's important to say, well, this is Rick and myself working together, rather than bringing in too many guest artists. In a way, if you use people of Dave's caliber, you sort of undermine the existence of your own work, because they tend to overpower, I think, quite easily. Rick has spent the last 7 years with 10cc, who perhaps are not quite so well known in America, but in England had a lot of hits, and were a very professional band, full of originally, of course, it was Eric Stewart and Graham Goldman and Lowell Cream and Kevin Godley.
So he was with 10cc.
Yeah, but when there was a big split, Rick joined 7 years ago. So, and they were all good players. So I think if Rick's taken on to play guitar, it's an indication of his work.
Now we move on to the first book of Corinthians.
Yes.
And a song called Israel.
Right. Lyrics by someone called Danny Perinal, who also sings the lead vocal on it. And Danny is not very well known, but he's spent a long time working in South America. He's Argentinian, I think. And he's now in a band called Tarzan.
Well, this boy can sing.
Yeah. And one of the nice things, I think, about using different vocalists is the ability to sort of choose people on how they sing, rather than feel that to use them exactly as one would use other instrumentation in a band. And it was that is not a song, I think, really that I'd ask Dave to sing.
No.
And one almost gets used to the idea that if you choose a vocalist, you have to use the same guy to do everything.
Yeah.
Of course, it's not the case. That's a history of Africa in 3.5 minutes.
I was going to say, it's
my next global atlas will be slightly more in depth.
Why this subject on your album?
I think it was just I think it's a nice idea. It's really, the idea is a very simple one. I mean, it's about the permanence of land masses and the impermanence of the people who move through and across a landmass. And that's it, really, in a nutshell.
When you look at this stuff happening over there, do you view this as something that will be solved someday, or this is just one more stumbling block that mankind is just, seems to always go through, repeating the history over and over?
No, I suppose mankind does go on repeating history, but in very different ways. And I mean, I think it's a good and elaborate question. There, at some point, I would imagine there is going to have to be some evening out over the world of the wealth or the way that we use in natural resources, and in a way, it seems to me a terrible worry that we're going to get into space well before we've sorted out our own civilization, or simply, take some rather ghastly stuff out to the stars. What would be nice would be to resolve how to live on Earth and then go.
How do you feel about because in the Middle East here with the song Israel, in India, going back a few years to the turn of the century when the sun never set on the British Empire, and all the lessons learned with Gandhi and down the line, and then to still be fighting over. I mean, I don't mean to make you answer for this, but
Well, I mean, we're all still totally committed to principle, aren't we? And political principle particularly, and whether it's if you can, we've got embarrassments. That's not too weak a word to cover Northern Ireland or Nicaragua or whatever. There are all sorts of things that we feel there's principles involved that we're bound to do something about. Now, I mean, I'm not preaching world communism and sort of handing the world over to Reds, but I think when we're talking about how we're going to eventually resolve all world problems, I mean, it's hard to imagine ever getting it right until we have some sort of leveling of, as I say, distribution of wealth, at least with enough food for everyone. Possibly, I think one of the things that the world will one day come to terms with will be an international language or a selection of languages. I mean, I quite like the idea of perhaps having almost like the old world where Latin was the international language almost, that you'd have a sort of English-American, which would be the language of science and would be used for scientific discussion, and then perhaps something like French for literature and art, and perhaps then you take Chinese probably, you take the major language that's spoken by the greatest number of people and have something for basic communication.
All right, we're going to ask you some history here now, if you don't mind. I'll try not to drag you through too much of it, but I want to get some of your views. So first off, let's do it on a positive note. We'll come from a positive aspect here.
Right.
What was your favorite time period of Pink Floyd? When you think back, what would be the first thing that came to your mind that was the most enjoyable part of that experience?
Pink Floyd
Was a band you were with for a while?
Hi. Sorry. The most enjoyable period. I suppose the short answer to that would be never missing a trick. The time we were doing The Wall in LA, and I had the opportunity to meet great people like you, Jim.
Oh, yeah. Okay, sure.
Can I get on the John Carson show now?
Note, yeah.
I suppose the real answer would be to say, generally looking back, would be whenever the times when we've done our best work, which would definitely encompass the Wall shows here in New York and so on. Perhaps particularly LA because of the business of working up to it. It was a very intense period and great fun, very enjoyable. The good bits are generally, I mean, they're made up of two things. The professional aspects, meaning the ends of most albums. I mean, generally when we finished an album, we were pleased with it. We've never released anything we were ashamed of or felt was bad,
No.
to my knowledge. So those sort of periods, and the periods when we had the best fun, which, that's made up with odd incidents throughout the entire history of the band. I mean, it's a great way to spend time.
How do you feel about, and I know that the politician's going to come out here, maybe not. How do you feel about Roger and David's solo work? Do you like it?
Yes, I do. I mean, I think it's very important that all of us work on our own full stop. I think there's a whole sort of, it's a whole area, but I've always felt that it's very important for a band not to become too isolated within itself, and that it's good for anyone. It's a bit of therapy to get out. And there's so many problems that occur when a band stay together for a long time. I think apart from settling into patterns of working together, which is dangerous in itself, it tends to stultify your thinking.
Sure.
You tend to get sort of suffer personality defects as an individual. I mean, I would say, I always feel that the thing that becomes most alarming is the idea of being found out, that you get to most people have a sort of rather, they have a fairly realistic idea of how good they are as a musician. It's usually that they're not that great, they could do better and all the rest of it. And so you get very nervous, or I'll talk about myself, that I find that I'm nervous of working with other people, because I think, well, they think I'm good because I'm in Pink Floyd and we've sold a lot of records. I think I'm pretty terrible. And when they actually start trying to play this with me, they're going to go, what are you doing? I thought you were meant to be good.
You're going to see the man behind the curtain.
Right, and that's all going to be dreadful. But in fact, of course, things aren't that bad, really. And in fact, working with other people tells you that you can do other things. Absolutely. And you can find other ways of working, and that other people have problems too.
What was the most difficult period in Pink Floyd's history for you?
I don't really know. I'm sort of trying to flick through in my mind. I suppose more recently it's got more difficult with having, certainly with the final cut, perhaps, where I had the least I've had to do with an album. And I think it's something I didn't particularly enjoy, and it's something that if we do work together again, hopefully we'll, I think both Dave and I felt frustrated, frankly, at how we ran it. But that's as much our, one thing to state very clearly is that whatever's wrong is everyone's fault, sort of thing. And that this isn't a sort of, I hate Roger Waters, he's beastly, but I can only tell him on the radio because otherwise he might be horrid to me. It's, that we perhaps didn't work hard enough at saying to Roger, all right, we'll do this, and you do that, and so on. And that bands are always readjusting the way they work together.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to, before I got onto that, I was thinking about the early days when the times were tough. But of course, that's easy, that part. The problems always occur later on. I mean, if the way we were scorned when we first started working, and deservedly so, I have to say, some of the time, because we were dreadful. It's quite bizarre to look back on it, because what we should have done was packed up immediately and gone and done something else. But, there was a sort of confidence that carried us through all that.
Now with the release of the various solo LPs, The Pros and Cons of Hitchhiking by Roger Waters, About Bass by David Gilmour, and this most recent effort, Profiles by Nick Mason, plus the fact that Roger toured alone in support of his LP, may make you wonder if we'll ever see another Pink Floyd album. So I thought we'd take this opportunity to hear everybody's side of the story. We'll start with writer and bassist Roger Waters.
What is the current status of Pink Floyd as a band?
It's on a shelf.
Okay.
Mm.
So it's neither here nor gone.
Yeah.
On the shelf.
Yeah.
All right. And if you were to express a personal hope, not getting into all the business ramifications and contractual stuff, but just your personal hope for Pink Floyd, what would that be?
I don't really think about that a lot. I didn't. I hope whatever happens is graceful.
Now we're going to hear from guitarist and vocalist David Gilmour.
I haven't quit, and Mick hasn't quit, and Roger hasn't told me or Mick that he's quit. But as far as I know, we're still technically in existence. But when or if we do anything again, as anyone can, not going to be for a while.
And now back to our guest tonight, drummer Nick Mason.
Is there any hope for an album in the future? Is it open, or
Well, the nice thing about this is that Dave and Roger and myself, all having been around America in the last year or so, have all given different stories, sometimes different stories to different people on the same day, on two of us. But the story at the moment is definitely that Dave and myself now feel we'd like to get the band back to work. Now, I don't think Roger does, but I think possibly if there's a more positive attitude from two of us, that might swing it a bit. Another point worth making on this is that Roger felt quite strongly that he was detrimental to his solo work to have the band sort of hanging over his head, that people would always be saying, oh, well, it's just Roger's solo album, because the attitude has been slightly different. Dave and myself very much see the solo albums as something to do, which are done as a sort of to augment Floyd work and in between and so on. And Roger, I think, feels strongly that he wants his album taken on its own merits, not as a little sort of dabble, but as a real thing. And that, and I think he's right, really. That's correct. If you actually announced the complete fold-up Pink Floyd, people might say, oh, well, what's the nearest thing? So who's to say, really, who's right or wrong on that?